Greetings, Earthlings. Oz here from planetOZ, and as you can see, it is a glorious day here on planetOZ. All four suns are shining down on this glorious planet, yes, and I am transmitting to you today to follow up on a film I made before about reincarnation, called Pouring Into the Pattern, and I'll link to that film. But if you didn't see it, it was discussing the work of Dolores Cannon and how people under regressive hypnosis would tell her about their experiences in between lives, reincarnation, and all that, and they would talk about this concept of pouring into the pattern. And so, so in that film, I was just talking about ideas of what pouring into the pattern exactly is and what it implies. And in a broad sense, it basically is people saying that as they were incarnating, they went through this process where once they decided they were going to incarnate, they sort of were here. They maybe were sometimes with their body when their body was in utero, and sometimes with or not with their body when they were a child up until 5 years of age. So so that was an eye-opener to me, this concept of that, an incarnated being might not actually be fully with the consciousness, the spirit, up until 5 years. It could still be going back and forth. That's very interesting. So in that film, I was talking about how people in her stories use the phrase pouring into the pattern, and it's kind of just breaking it down. And what does that mean? What does it imply? So with this one, I am taking that and looking at the implication of pouring in to the pattern and the suggestion that maybe that also means that there is a pouring out of the pattern. And that I encountered, this wasn't something that I remember reading specifically in the Dolores Cannon material, but it's something that more just kind of comes from an intuitive place, that if there's we could imagine if there's a transition coming into this realm, and that could be a long transition spread over as much as years, or presumably people have the option, everyone handles it differently, handles it uniquely. Maybe in some cases people just all in one big slam go from living purely and blissfully in the ethereal realm to whack, it's time to go, you're in here. And maybe you just time that with the birth of the baby, and the both of you just come out crying, having no idea where you are. So so it could probably run the whole spectrum. And so then this presents the question, what about pouring out of the pattern? Is that something? Is that a real thing? What does that look like? And again, if we were to imagine that this would presumably have a spectrum to it, then the very, very quick pouring out of the pattern, so to speak, the just immediate exit would be, crashing into the wall or falling off the cliff or whatever, where it's just bam, but in terms of extending over time, I guess that you could think maybe like some kind of a terminal illness, long-term thing like that. But my gut says that this would be more of an more of a consciousness kind of thing, more spirit-oriented, consciousness-oriented. So if that's the case, then the pouring out of the pattern, I would imagine, might suggest if the physical is a manifestation of the metaphysical or the spiritual in this sense, then pouring out of the pattern probably looks like something like Alzheimer's or it's interesting. I think about etymology a lot with stuff, because the words we use for things are vibrations, and there are vibrations, I believe, that are innate to things, and consequently a certain thing will have a particular sound, a particular vibration that matches it to a more accurate extent than something else. So anyway, this is a little bit of a detour, but I'm going to go a little bit further with it. So this is basically what this would suggest, for example, is if two cultures have different words for the same thing, let's say it's something that you can sit on, one culture calls it a chair, and the other one calls it a gloondock. Then when these two cultures merge together, for a while they're using both, and they're calling it a chair and they're calling it a gloondock. Whatever happened in that society? What happened with that? What happened to gloondock, and why doesn't anybody ever say that anymore about the chair? Why doesn't anyone ever call it that anymore? So clearly, over time, as these two cultures blend, one of their word wins out. So which one is it, and why? Possibly what it is somebody had the word chair that has a resonance, a sound vibration, and they were associating it with the thing that you sit on. And so that vibration was closer to being true than the gloondock. So all of this is to say that I think you can get a lot out of etymology, and you can get a lot out of it even when the spellings are different. When the sound is what we use and that's the same, then I think that can be effective. But having said all that, I've now completely forgotten what it was I was even talking about before I got back onto this thing. I somehow started talking about the fact that we have gloondocks, and one word wins out because of the etymology and the vibration. So what was the etymology of? Okay, I cut out a chunk there where I was just sitting here just like trying to figure out why I had started talking about etymology. Yes, etymology, because one of the terms that we use, or one of the things that people encounter when they're getting older and they're getting ready to pass on, we call it dementia. And it's interesting. It's etymology. I'm sure there are medical, scientific reasons, whatever, how they came to dementia, but it sounds a lot like dimension, and doesn't it seem to look like a condition in which somebody is kind of between dimensions and not always here? And it's just, when it's thought of in the purely rational scientific worldview sense that we're all just random atoms crashing into each other, when it's thought of that way, then it's like we think of it like we're losing this person. They're just being lost. They're leaving us because I guess in a real third density sense, the gray matter inside their brain is deteriorating, and this is causing them then to not be entirely here. They're not entirely with us. But where this other place is, in that material worldview sense, is quite sad. It's depressing. It's just like, where are they? Well, they're nowhere. They're vacillating between that part of their brain that's left that still functions, and this nothingness, oblivion of whatever is happening to the rest of their brain. But if the idea of reincarnation is true, if reincarnation is the model and it's real, and if that then means there could be another explanation for this pouring out of the pattern, or this dementia concept, let's say, it would be quite interesting, and actually not nearly as dismal a view as the third density viewpoint on it, because in this case we are talking about someone pouring out of the pattern in the same way that the soul pours in, or the consciousness pours in over time, over years, maybe even from in utero through like a couple years old. You're pouring into the pattern, sometimes here, sometimes not, or whatever. And we don't know exactly what that looks like when we're looking at a kid. Maybe the kid just looks kind of off. Maybe the kid looks like they're in their own place, in their own world. Intuitively we might think that it takes the form of appearing like Asperger's or autism, except those things tend to stay after they tend to stay, and the child works with it their whole life. Whereas this would be, whatever this would manifest as, it would seem it goes away somewhere around, somewhere before year 5. So yeah. So anyway, if pouring out of the pattern is happening in a similar way, if it's a transition between dimensions, and the person is not always here, but when they're not here, they're there. They're somewhere good. They would be in this other place, in this other realm, in the astral, or in the wherever they're headed next. Not for nothing, these people say that also during these phases, they say, oh well, the person is lucid, and then they're off in their own space, and then they're talking to people. And they're talking to people, they're talking to relatives, they're talking to others, they're talking to people who are long gone. And so, what do we translate that to when we're just thinking in real material terms? It's, they're losing it. They're losing it. Those people are gone. They're losing their grip on reality. How sad for them that they're thinking that they're seeing someone that they're not seeing. But what if it's not? What if it's what if they're talking to people as part of that sort of long process? That pouring out process allows a bleeding over of one to the other, whether you're on your way in or you're on your way out. Maybe you are, maybe you're one foot in that other place and you are talking to these people. If you're reincarnating, if there's time between lives, then all of this stuff is real. Then that means that that everyone else is doing it too, and those people that we thought we had lost are not gone. They are just gone from that purely material vibrational sense that we're used to understanding them in. So there's that person, possibly, maybe this is what it means, maybe pouring out of the pattern, maybe kind of on their way, maybe getting a touch, a taste, sometimes spent in that beautiful place they're going, only to come back here and continue resolving whatever it is that they're here to do, and their mission and their karma, and going back and forth. in some ways, it's actually kind of a beautiful way to do it if you're able to do such a thing on purpose. May not actually look that way or manifest that way for the people around you, especially if they're not seeing it through this lens. If you're seeing it through purely a third density lens, it's going to be very, very sad and very tough to watch. So certainly don't want to minimize that, but yeah, I don't know. Food for thought. Pouring out of the pattern. Godspeed, friends from planet Oz.